Kia ora koutou, everybody. Let's get into the afternoon's agenda. You are all, I hope, armed with a glass of a beautiful-looking rosé. So this afternoon could go one of two ways. Well, actually, cancel that. One way. We are on the road to those regional dinners tonight. And I'm going to reintroduce you to the Executive Director of Marketing at EIT, Brenda Chapman, who you heard from last night, also while drinking wine. So I understand she only speaks to a crowd that is armed with wine. So please, we like those kinds of people. Please give Brenda a very warm welcome.
Ena reo, ena ro rangatira ma, tēnā koutou. He mihi mai oha ki a koutou, kua hui mai nei I runa I te kaupapa whakahirahira o tēnei wiki. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you so much for last night. We had a spectacular night hosting you. It was so much fun. The School of Tourism and Hospitality pulled it off. The wine workshop was amazing. Elise Rose from Idea School, Bachelor of Creative Practice, Year 2 Music, was fabulous. And also Idea School designed the wine and beer labels on behalf of the CATE conference. So I had a key message for you last night during my 3 minutes. Who remembers what I talked about? I have a bottle of rosé for you. Year 13, Year 2 scholarship. If you recall, government fees free for Year 1. EIT provides Year 2. If the student qualifies, they must apply. So this is a scholarship for any student nationwide for 2 of our degrees. The Bachelor of Viticulture and Wine, which you'll be hearing about shortly, and the Bachelor of Māori Visual Arts at EIT Tairāwhiti at Toihokura in Gisborne. One of my colleagues is here, Sue Matthews from EIT Tairāwhiti. So many of us enjoy a tipple, and a few of us did that last night. But are you aware of the job opportunities for young graduates in the fascinating world of wine? If you have students who are into science, then this growing industry has great opportunities, not only in Hawke's Bay, not just in New Zealand, but worldwide. We've been a leader in wine education for over 20 years, and many of the winemakers and viticulturists in New Zealand have graduated from EIT. Over the next hour, we have wine tasting with Aunt Mackenzie. You've got a tasting sample. You have 50 mils in your glass. Lucky for you, there's a few people who have not come back. So if you get through that one and you need a second one, there's some more just outside. Then you'll hear from our head of school, Viticulture and Wine Science. Sue Blackmore will be telling you about this exciting industry and about our new Bachelor of Viticulture and Wine Science. We have 2 graduates and a student as well, because I know how you all love to hear the stories of success from our graduates and students. So first up, it's my very great pleasure to introduce our very own Aunt Mackenzie. We're lucky to have Aunt teaching part-time for the School of Viticulture and Wine Science, because he's also rather busy with his own wine business. Aunt began his winemaking journey by doing harvests in Hawke's Bay, California, Spain, and Australia. His winemaking roles were with Framingham, Spy Valley, and Mudhouse Wine Group over a 15-year period. A mid-career change of region in 2009 saw Aunt return to live in Hawke's Bay to take up the position of general manager and winemaker at Te Awa and Dry River in Martinborough. Following the sale of the Te Awa Vineyards and Winery to Villa Maria Estate, he became an industry consultant, helping winemaking clients optimize wine quality and market outcomes, because it's all about selling. In 2015, Aunt launched his own wine brand, and this afternoon, we get to try it. Aunt will take us through a tasting. So would you please welcome Aunt Mackenzie.
That's what 500 people look like. So thanks, Brenda. So my role at EIT, amongst other things, is teaching sensory science. And we teach the students how to assess wine. We teach them the basic tastes, and we give them a little bit of an insight on the wines of the world. We're obviously in Hawke's Bay, a very diverse region. We make fantastic local examples of all of the wines of the world, and the students get to learn a little bit about where those wines come from. We actually use all 5 senses for wine tasting, but it's really only the first 3 that are the most important. So we've got our sense of sight, we've got our sense of smell, and we've also got our taste. There's also touch and also hearing, and we do use those senses. You wonder about hearing. The main one I think of is a champagne cork popping. So yeah, the first 3. So when we look at a wine, we get a little bit of an indication about what style it is. So white wine, red wine, rosé, and we also get a little bit of an indication of how old the wine might be. So is it a vibrant colour, or is it a dull, almost brown colour? And as wines age, they sort of pick up those developed sort of colours. The next thing is the aromatics. So depending on whites or reds, we've got all of the fruit spectrum. They can be berry fruits, they can be stone fruits, they can be, citrus, pip fruits, you name it. Then there's the things that we do to the wine as winemakers, and that includes aging the wine in barrels, how we choose the yeast for the fermentation, how we mature the wine, and so they're all sort of secondary characteristics. And then finally there's the taste. And so when we talk about taste, we talk about, I guess, sweetness, acidity, saltiness, and bitterness. You might wonder about feel, the sense that I haven't talked about. Well, feel is the textural qualities of wine in your mouth. But really it's the first three that we really think about for particularly white wines and rosés, and texture's sort of another part of, I guess, assessing red wine. There is a fifth taste. Does anybody know what that is? Umami, yeah. So that's a sort of more recent discovery, but umami's a savoury nuance. So if you think of soy or perhaps beef stock or even, onions and garlic sort of provide that deliciousness to, the cooking that we do. So we can also get those characters in wine. So we've got a 2018 rosé. It's from one of my brands called Tono, T-O-N-O, and that's a Spanish name. It's sort of a nickname for me. When I worked in Spain, the locals called me Tono, which I guess is short for Antonio. So I do a sort of Spanish range of wines. I also do an Albarino and a Tempranillo under this range. So we're looking at the Rosado today. The first thing we look at is the colour, and it's a 2018, but it's got a very vibrant sort of youthful colour. I mean, rosé can be anywhere from, barely coloured right through to almost a red wine, depending on what red grapes are used to make the wine. So I guess everybody knows that rosé is made out of red wine? Yeah, red grapes, sorry. Yeah. So they're lightly pressed red grapes, so depending on how hard you press it or depending on what variety you're using really influences the colour. So this one's actually made from a bit of a blend, but it's mainly Pinot Noir. So it's reasonably light coloured. The next thing we do is we have a look at the nose. So give the wine a little bit of a swirl in the glass. Not a great big swirl, so it slops over. And then just put your nose in the glass and take a gentle smell. If you take a big snort, you're likely to smell the perfume on your neighbour. So, the key is give it a little bit of a swirl, let the aromas come out of the wine, and then give it a little bit of a smell. And so the aromas of rosés typically are in the spectrum of, berry fruit, strawberries, blackberries, rhubarb even, which is not a berry fruit, but it's something that we're all familiar with. And often we get a little bit of creaminess as well. So it's not unusual to describe a rosé as kind of strawberries and cream. Sometimes we get floral notes as well. So, floral notes, jasmine, lots of jasmine out at the moment. It's a wonderful aroma. And, things like Asian lilies, not these ones, but Asian lilies that smell. So we get a whole range of aromatic profile. So we've already learnt most about the wine from those first two senses, the sight and the aromas. The last thing we do is taste it. And so when we're tasting a wine, we're thinking of the sweetness, the sourness or the acidity. We're thinking about, or maybe we're not really thinking of saltiness. That's a bit of an unusual one. But there's also bitterness. And saltiness, we're not really expecting that. And bitterness, we really shouldn't see bitterness in wine either. So it's really, we're talking about the sweetness and the acidity. So this one's got a touch of sugar, and it's got a good good acid structure as well. So it's a refreshing wine, and that's what rosé should be, I think. Lovely balance as well. Balance is important, especially we sort of classify wines as wines that you drink on their own and wines that you might drink with food. So this one's, one of the wines that you just, guzzle half a bottle, on its own. Well, at least I do. But it also goes well with, antipastos, sort of platters and things like that. So yeah, a great wine style. I hope you've all learnt a little bit about wine tasting today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anne. Sue Blackmore joined EIT this year as the head of School of Viticulture and Wine Science. She studied horticulture science at Massey University and gained her postgraduate diploma in viticulture and oenology and a master's in applied science and oenology at Lincoln University. She spent many years overseas, you won't know when you look at her, including Australia, Malaysia, Japan, Great Britain, America, and Germany, working in both wine production and education. Sue has been involved in tertiary education for 15 years in New Zealand. We're very lucky to have her join us at EIT. Would you please welcome Sue Blackmore?
Wow, 500. Well, thank you for that very kind introduction, Brenda. I'd like to start probably with a few definitions to get us sort of on the same kind of track. So, viticulture, as we can see, always accompanied by suitably beautiful landscapes. I've never actually seen an ugly wine area as yet. But viticulture, what does it really mean? I mean, it covers the whole gambit of things that we do and the decisions made to actually grow grapes for wine. So we're talking about choosing the site, choosing the varietals, how close you're planting them, pest control, planting, canopy management, everything up to that picking the grapes, making that final assessment and picking them. But it also has to go hand in hand with the other side, so winemaking. Without the two together, you can't produce a great wine. So enology, or oenology, you can pronounce it however you like, basically means wine science. And that too is really multifaceted. So it's for me, it's a combination of science. So think things like chemistry, biochemistry, microbiology. I mean, you've got to choose the yeast, the bacteria involved. It's a complex kind of interaction. Understanding the chemistry of the wine as it ages is important. As Ant talked about barrels, they add a whole sort of other kind of spectrum of composition to the wine. And also thinking about gaining wine stability. So we need to worry about things like protein stability and tartrate stability in wine, which proteins in wine, but yeah, it is an issue. Another thing that's important is really what Ant's been talking about, is the art. So we really encourage our students, obviously, to develop a palate. They've got to understand what good examples of a wine style is. They also have to try and do what Ant does, is to imagine what the final product is going to be and put together those many components into that final best product. And that is an art. Engineering. Now, wineries are full of some pretty interesting kit, and they have to be able to use that, they've got to be able to fix them, and they've got to be able to understand them. In New Zealand, wineries are actually quite rapid uptakers of modern technology, so engineering is part of being a winemaker. Right, EIT. EIT, I like to say, is in New Zealand's most diverse wine area. We're incredibly lucky. Hawke's Bay is known for its, obviously, climate, its soils, the sea around us, the rivers. It's a fantastic place to grow a lot of crops, and grapes being one of them. Always a beautiful photograph. So this is Pask Winery in autumn. It's a beautiful photo. So things like heat summation are important. So that's the sunshine hours we have here. So 2,180, according to the stats. And that puts us, in terms of heat summation, between Bordeaux and Burgundy. But we have, as you can see around us, that amazing maritime influence. And that keeps the diurnal, the nighttime temperatures low, and maintains those wonderful flavours and aromas that winemakers need. But why do I say diverse? Well, definitely diverse in terms of the number of varietals grown in the area, 41, which actually surprised me when I read that. There's about 5,000 hectares planted in the region, and the big three are Chardonnay. I often think of Hawke's Bay, wonderful Chardonnay with great acid and length and structure. Merlot, of course, and Sauvignon Blanc. So not the kind of in-your-face Marlborough Sauvignon, but probably one that's maybe a bit more elegant and a bit more sort of mouthfeel orientated. What else do we produce? The other big four, Syrah, which this area is becoming increasingly known for, the crowd-pleasing Pinot Gris, can't miss that out, and of course Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon. So a really interesting mix, and then all the others as well. But also, Hawke's Bay is incredibly diverse in terms of the types of companies and the way the wines are made. So many varietals, but also many wine styles and examples of those. The companies are a mixture of multinationals, but also a lot of family-owned companies with different ethos. So it's a really interesting and diverse area. Also very supportive in terms of industry to EIT, and I've got to commend them for that. It's absolutely fantastic. Right, another quick swig. I'll dry out. It's not wine. I know it should be wine, but I'm actually swigging back water. So, what is this thing about this industry? Why do we need these graduates? Well, I mean, I'll start with a 20-year story. If we kind of look back to 1996, the industry was producing about 75,000 tonnes of grapes. If you look at the other end, so we're heading towards 2016-17, we're getting towards 450,000, 500,000 tonnes of grapes in that 20 years. But if we look a bit at the figures in terms of 2019, New Zealand has nearly 39,000 hectares of grapes planted now, predominantly white because we're a cool climate wine country. So 31,000 of those are white and 8,000 are red. 77% of the whites are one varietal. What varietal was that? Sauvignon Blanc, yeah. So a lot of Sauvignon Blanc and a lot of planting, obviously, in Marlborough as well. So what does that mean in terms of financial exports and quantities? So if we look at now the 10 years, we're kind of narrowing it down a bit. 113 million litres were exported in 2009, and the value was about nearly $1 billion, so 991 million. Jump ahead 10 years, and this is incredible. By the end of this year, it's thought that we will have exported 270 million hectares, that would be bad, million litres of wine, and we're over $1.8 billion. So that's in 10 years, and the thing for me is the value has actually increased 7% in the last year alone. So it's growing still. The biggest three markets are the US, the UK and Australia, but if you look at UK, it went up 15% even in that year. So take-home message from that is the industry is still growing, and it needs graduates, it needs people to work in the cellars, and it needs people to work in viticulture, and probably the latter, viticulture, being the highest demand for graduates. Right, so what is the current education system? So there's a certain amount done at high school level, and some at in-job at level 3 and level 4. Post-Rove, the names there will change because the ITOs won't be there, but NMIT and EIT are involved in that space, and what's happening will continue, but possibly the names will be slightly different. What won't change is what's happening at degree level. right? So Lincoln University will still be there, NMIT will still be there, EIT will still be there, and NMIT and EIT will be working closer together. So that's great in terms of the future of education and a sensible move, I believe. Right, so that brings us on to what we are going to be offering from next year. So we're very excited to have a new bachelor's degree in viticulture and wine science together. So I've kind of talked about what those two things are. They are important that the students understand both parts of that. They're very intermeshed. So that's levels 5 to 7. We will still have the graduate diploma in viticulture and a graduate diploma in enology. So if someone has a degree, they can become qualified in a year. Oops, wrong button. Right, so what is the aim of the new degree? Basically, it's to produce work-ready graduates, people that have been exposed to the practical nature of the industry, that we're giving them skills to understand the practicalities of working it. So work-ready. But also, the degree needs to be flexible. So on campus and new and updated online, but also blended, because people sometimes are in a situation where they want to work and they want to be able to come in and take some classes as well. And all of those things we talked about in terms of microbiology, engineering, pest and disease management, soil science, sustainability, all of those things drawn together into the curriculum. Right, so we listen to the industry, we listen to past students, and we listen to current students about what we really needed to do in this region. So we've maintained a strong science platform. That's really important, the academic integrity. The equal balance of viticulture and wine, obviously, we've talked about. And will test this sensory palate development through each of the years. So the students are building up that. Wine business, wine management, and wine marketing. The industry said to us, our graduates need those skills when they get out. It's all well to be obsessed with vit and wine, but once they're working, they need to be able to manage people. And again, practical application at every year. So the aim is to get people out into the industry and to get the industry in as much as possible. Right, so a quick snapshot in terms of the years. So we get the students out, in-house making wine in semester 1. So they're there doing that. We've got the strong science background at that point too, so microbiology, organic and organic chemistry, plant science, palate development beginning at that stage, but also practical things like doing tractor driving and also a first aid course, so they can get out there and be doing vineyard work at the end of the year. Year 2, we start a little bit earlier in the year. The students have free time to go out and do a full-time vintage in a commercial winery. So they're out there straight away. And we assist them by them getting a forklift course with us as well. So again, and then the other areas, continued development, continued palate development, vit and wine, and also preparation for research. So the final year, the final year has the capstone project. So this is a research project that is done in collaboration with industry. So really important in terms of pulling all those strands together. There are 2 other compulsory papers and then other courses they can choose from, like sustainability management, wine business, etc. So that's sort of some highlights of the degree. But the take-home message really is that maintaining the science, but also that practical application at each stage, year 1, year 2, and year 3. Whoops, sorry, saying a bit of practical there. Right. We have a huge support from the industry, as I've already alluded to. They come in, we encourage them to come in and they agree to do it, and they're here today, which is amazing. Practical work placements, field trips, guest speakers for tastings and for guest lectureships. And we're also involved together with the young winemaker and the young viticulturalist competitions in the region, which is fantastic. But their help in actually the program development and giving us ideas for what they need is invaluable. So we can supply graduates that are appropriate for what they want. Also scholarships. So the industry is amazing at this. We have a new Year 1 scholarship this year from ULA, which is a organic wine company in Waipara, $10,000 over 3 years. The second years can apply for the AMP Craigie Range Scholarship, $3,500, and all of these come with vintage work. And in Year 3, the Constellation $5,000 grant, which is absolutely fabulous. Assists any student to get through. Another opportunity the students at EIT on this degree have is a chance to go to Italy. So one student per year of the second years gets a chance to go for a month to Italy. We have an exchange with Padua University. So an Italian student comes here for a month, travels around, gets it all paid for, and stays with wineries and vineyards. And vice versa to Italy. So, I suppose I can leave you with the message, make your profession your passion. I think that those of us that are in the front row have done that. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Sue. So I'd like to introduce a couple of our graduates and a current student. So if you come up individually and then we'll have a chat in front of the audience. There is a PIN number for this session. If you've got questions, Manny's going to put it up for me after. So the PIN is 4454. So first up, I'd like to introduce Lockie Bainbridge. Lockie is a recent he came to us as a school leaver from Napier Boys High School, and he achieved the Bachelor of Wine Science in 2017, and Lockie's going to tell you about where he works, etc., so I won't give too much away. Sarah McDonald was also in the video, and it said Sarah Addis, so she's got married since the video was complete. So Sarah achieved the Graduate Diploma of Viticulture in 2018, and the Graduate Diploma Oenology. She was capped with that this year. And Ben Fulton is a current student. He's got an exam on Friday, and he's actually giving up study time to be here and tell you his story. So Ben is a concurrent student, so he's doing both the Bachelor of Viticulture and the Bachelor of Wine Science, and is married to a delightful woman who runs the restaurant called PAC
Filipino Asian Kitchen,
which is at West Shore Beach Inn. So if any of you who are staying for a few days, you might want to go to the West Shore and enjoy a meal at PAC. So I'll just jump over to the panel. So we'll start off with you, Lockie. So you came to EIT straight from Napier Boys High School.
Yep.
Could you tell us why you decided Bachelor of Wine Science straight from school?
Well, I always had a love for chemistry at high school. It's the class that I actually like going to. And the chemistry class would go to EIT winery to process some fruit, crush it, add some yeast, and do all the chemical analysis. So for me, that really sort of bridged the gap between learning chemistry in the class and the practical aspects of wine science. And it really sort of opened my eyes to the opportunities that are in wine. That coupled with the Year 13 scholarship. It's a pretty generous scholarship that I got my first year free, second year half price, so straight away my tuition fees were halved, plus you saw the pretty generous scholarships offered by other workplaces, and I got the Craigie Range one, which again sort of took another generous chunk out of my tuition fees. So I mean, that with EIT being pretty close to all the Hawke's Bay vineyards, it's a pretty prime place to learn about wine. And so, I think those were the biggest things for me.
So you've been busy at work, and
yes.
So Lockie had a late leave pass to arrive here today.
Yeah, yep.
So can you tell us about what you're doing and where you work?
So I'm working at a small producer called Ashridge out on State Highway 50 in the Bridgepower Triangle. So I'm the assistant winemaker there, and we do a bit of we do it all. We grow, we make, and we sell. So I'm part of all of that, and covered in yeast today. We've been disgorging sparkling red wine, so you're lucky I got a clean shirt on. So, and the sort of working in such a sort of local area, small producer, it's sort of the dream job, and that all stemmed from EIT. So yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. So Sarah, you came to us already with a degree. So I've explained that Sarah has 2 graduate diplomas. So tell us your story, how you ended up doing that.
Okay, I'm not very good at doing this succinctly, but let's hear it go. So I'm from the UK. I've lived in New Zealand for 6.5 years now. I came to New Zealand for a harvest job in 2013, but prior to that, I studied French and Spanish back in the UK. I graduated in 2010, not knowing what the hell I wanted to do. So I went travelling and found myself in Margaret River in Western Australia, found myself with a job in a cellar door, and first day realised this was my calling in life. I've been brought up with a family that drinks wine, loves wine, visited lots of wine regions, but I guess I just never really saw it as a career path. I don't know why, I wish I had. But anyway, so I got a harvest job in 2013 in Marlborough. I absolutely loved it. I then stayed, I got a permanent job there for 4 years, and then decided, okay, I want to take the next step. So I did a lot of research. I'm a very organised person that likes a lot of lists. So yeah, I had pros and cons of all the different places around New Zealand, back in the UK and in Adelaide, and I came to the conclusion that EIT was the best spot for me to come and study, because yeah, like you said, I do have previous degrees, and also I have a lot of experience from being a cellar hand for 4 years, so I kind of wanted to do a course that would quickly kind of take me to the next level, and that's exactly what I got.
So can you tell us about where you're working, what you're doing? Because Sarah's also been very busy. These are very, very busy people, And so Sarah, tell us where you work and what you do.
So I work for Villa Maria here in Hawke's Bay. I'm one of the lab technicians.
And so what does a day look like for you?
We're generally always very busy. We have a rolling kind of program of routine analysis, so we're constantly checking all the Chardonnays that are in barrel, all the white wines that are in tank, all the red wines in tank, then all the reds that are in barrel. So there's a lot that goes into that, making sure that everything's tracking the way we want it to. And then we're also basically getting wines ready for bottle. Winemakers will ask for trials of various additives or things that they kind of want to try out before the wines get to bottle. So there's a lot of that, and a lot of last minute analysis requests that drive us mad and have us running back into the barrel holes. So yeah, it's a very varied job. I absolutely love it. I'm learning heaps. My ultimate goal is to become a winemaker, so I'm learning every day and have so much contact with the winemakers, which is wonderful.
And so you are based at the new...
the new Uber winery.
Yes, the Uber winery. Have you heard of the Uber winery? No. Tell about the Uber winery.
So 2018 was the first harvest in the new winery that sits out the back of the Tiawa winery and restaurant. It's a winery that encompasses not only Villa Maria but also Tiawa, Esk and Vidal. So we have about 5 or 6 different winemakers, which is definitely not normal. So it's quite an interesting experience. There's a lot of people to learn from, which is amazing, and lots of different really small batch wines up to really big commercial blends. So get to see the whole range, which is absolutely fascinating. So
we have, do you want to talk about Nick and Ollie? Nick and Ollie.
Yes, I'm very lucky. I work with a lot of old EIT graduates, so we shouldn't say old.
Alumni.
They're my bosses.
Alumni.
Wiser. Yeah, so Ollie Powery is the company viticulturist for the whole of the Villa Maria group across New Zealand, which is a pretty huge job. And then Nick Bocconi is the company winemaker. So again, a massive job overseeing some huge brands, some huge volumes. And yeah, they both have so much they're very keen. I basically got into this video because unfortunately Nick couldn't be there, but Ollie was there pruning. So yeah, they're both very keen to give back to the local industry, which I see across the board here, which is just fabulous.
Cool, thank you. So Ben, tell us about your story. Where did you go to high school? What did you do when you finished? How'd you end up at EIT?
I finished high school in 2010, and after that I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wasn't really aware of the sort of viticulture and wine at the time. So right after high school I ended up getting a job in an apple pack house, and that was monotonous and boring, putting trays on a conveyor belt. doing that 10-hour days, 6 days a week, sort of really drained it out of you. But at the same time, I knew I liked wine. One wine in particular. Anyone heard of Bernardino Spumante? The old Pride and True. So yeah, that was one of the first ones I do like. I tried one the other day. It tastes like rubber now. So I've developed my palate. But I knew I wanted to get into learning more about wine and viticulture. So I selected to do the certificate in grape growing and winemaking that EIT offered. I did that in 2014. Right at the end of that, I got the certificate right at the end of the year, and I had connections with Villa Maria. So I currently work with Villa Maria and have since 2014, but mainly just cellar door work. So tasting wine all day and meeting people from around the world. It's not a bad job, it's pretty cool. Give it a go. But been doing the concurrent degree in viticulture and wine science since 2016, started it then. And there's been a lot of opportunities along the way that I haven't turned down. So two of the scholarships that EIT offer, one being the Constellation Brand Scholarship. So I got that in 2017, and I've just recently been awarded the Hawke's Bay Young Vintner Scholarship to get a vintage with Craigie Range. So yeah.
So tell us what's that going to look like for you in February when you start doing that, and what you'll be doing with EIT. Because you explained to me you'll be working with them for a vintage.
Yes, yep.
And not studying for that.
Yeah. So how my first semester is basically structured out is I've only got 4 papers to do next year. One of them is vintage, and working the vintage with Craigie Range pretty much sorts me out for that work experience part of the degree. But yeah, just prior to that, working with Villa Maria and the vineyards, and so next Monday through to the end of February, I'll be working with Villa and then Craigie Range for 2.5 months. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So, can you tell me, Sarah, about what was it like studying at postgraduate level? How was that different?
It was very different to my original university experience. There's definitely no Tuesday nights on the £2 triple vodkas. And then no Wednesdays feeling like hell. So it was very different, but I didn't feel like the old person in the room. There was definitely quite a lot of mature students, and definitely a lot that studied by distance, so it was great to meet them. I really loved being around all these people that were really young and passionate and wanted to learn about the industry, and I obviously love chatting about wine, so we'll talk to anybody that wants to listen to me about it. I did the 2 graduate diplomas back to back, and I'm not going to lie, it was a really tough gig with struggling, kind of having a proper adult life, trying to buy a house, having a partner and working at the same time. So it was pretty tough, but I did it, I survived, and it was absolutely amazing, and I've come out the other end and got a wonderful job. So experience-wise, definitely different, but I loved it because I was studying something I was truly, truly passionate about, and being in a place that really fostered that passion and enthusiasm that I have.
And Sarah, you won the Young Winemaker competition for the North Island. Can you tell us about that?
I did. The Young Winemaker of the Year competition is a competition that's been running for 5 years now. It's a competition, you have to be under 30 years old working in wine production. So in 2017, looking down the barrel of turning 30, I got a bit drunk one night and decided, right, I'm going to apply. I wasn't a winemaker. I was only studying viticulture at that stage, so I just thought, right, what the hell? What can you lose? So I decided to enter, and then I had to study like mad to kind of catch up and do a lot of winemaking study, and I entered, and I ended up, I still don't quite understand how. I ended up winning the North Island competition, and then I came second in the national competition. So that was a huge boost for me, something I'm incredibly proud of. And yes, now I'm on the national and the regional committees for organising that competition going forward.
Fantastic. It's an amazing contribution to the industry also. Thank you. So, Lockie, can you tell us maybe about some of the practical can you tell us about some of the practical aspects of your study and how it's helped you with your work at Ash Ridge?
Well, EIT has a pretty well-equipped winery that students have access to make our own wine, and I think the ability to sort of apply your knowledge that you learn in our classroom straight away into making wine is pretty valuable learning, and that sort of happened with the vineyard. we've got a lot of hands-on experience with the vineyard and especially in the lab with all the chemistry involved, and sort of those skills, translate directly into the workplace. So I think it's very relevant learning. That's, you use everything that you learn. So I think that's, a great thing. So yeah.
And tell us about, did you make industry contacts while you were studying?
Yeah, definitely. The career that I have now all stemmed from people that I've met at EIT. It was my second year, 2014. I covered someone's shift at Ashridge, and then, the contacts I made with that, I ended up getting a full-time gig. So, that's amazing. And plus the Craigie Range scholarship that I got from EIT, that entry into the industry with a, paid internship was pretty awesome. And then people I met there got me my job, and I had a job in Australia, then a job in California, all through relations that I made from EIT. So, the ability to network and with EIT being involved in so many other events and, tastings and all that kind of stuff, there's always people to meet and hands to shake. So, yeah.
Cool. So I'm thinking this group of people who we have in front of us, these are careers advisors and transition educators. They work with high school students 40 weeks out of the year. If you could give them any advice about things that they should say to someone who's year 11 to 13 about their future career, what things should young people be thinking about?
It's definitely a fun industry. It's not, you're not stuck in the office 9 to 5. There's social aspects and, the travel aspects. It's taken me around the world, and I've got to, meet so many cool people, have made some, pretty awesome friends. And I think that aspect, doesn't make it just, as I said, toiling away in the office all day. So there's so many great things outside of the job that comes from wine. I think it makes it a, very desirable career, and, definitely something that I'm glad that I've done. So, yeah.
Sarah, any advice you have?
I definitely agree with what Lockie has said. Also, I think New Zealand, the wine industry here is such an exciting place to be. We are not constrained by laws like they are in France. We can kind of give anything a go, and that's definitely the kind of attitude that I see a lot in this industry, and it's really exciting. New Zealand really does, or the New Zealand wine industry really does kind of, we are the pioneers of sustainability, so that's really, really exciting. I think that's going to become all the more important going forward. And yeah, we just need lots of young new talent coming through, because there is a big move now. There's a lot of young talent coming through, and we've just got to keep that coming, because it's such an exciting place, and it's just going to keep getting better and better.
And how much has Villa as a company grown?
Oh, Villa's grown heaps. I think most people will know the kind of gist of the story of Sir George Fistanich kind of starting it on his own with making a bucket full of grapes, and now they're the third most admired wine brand in the whole world. Like, that's an amazing achievement from some tiny little bucket in New Zealand. I think that's an amazing story.
And Ben, how about you? What advice do you have for these people who are talking to young people every day?
I think Sue summed it up quite nicely. Make your career your passion. You can see how diverse, obviously, viticulture and wine can be, and I think that may apply to a lot of people, so I think that's the advice I'd give.
And so, Ben, where do you see you're going to graduate? Not this coming year, the following year, so 2021. So what do you see your next 5 years after that?
So with the qualification that I'm about to gain, I think just travel, visit countries, learn a lot about different cultures and different winemaking and viticulture, and that's my plan for the next 5 years, and aspire to be in a more management position of viticultural wine, and that's what the qualification can allow me to do. So,
great. How about you, Sarah? Just married, new house, couple of grad dips.
I intend to drink all the rest of the wedding wine that was left over that I strategically overbought on. Yeah, in 5 years, I definitely see myself in a winemaking role. Hopefully that will be in Hawke's Bay. I absolutely love it here. That's another massive plus for EIT. This is such an exciting region to live and work in. Coming from Marlborough, where it's an amazing wine region, but there's not the kind of buzz around it that Hawke's Bay has, with all the amazing restaurants and bars and just the diversity of wineries here. It's just a great place to live.
Thank you. And you, Lockie?
Yeah, well, I'm part of a growing business. We're still pretty small, but there's there's heaps of room for movement, so I'll probably stick with them and move up move up the ladder. It's an exciting place to be. Our work especially, we're becoming organic and all those kinds of things, and so there's so much to learn still, so much wine to drink and all that kind of stuff. So can't stop moving really.
So we haven't had any questions from the audience yet. So would anybody?
Can I just ask, what is the working conditions like in terms of hours that you have to work in and pay rates and things like that?
That's a great question. So the question is, what are the working conditions like and what are the pay rates like? Because we know during vintage, you don't actually have a life outside of vintage. So what's it like generally?
Vintage is pretty hard out, depending on where you work. You work in pretty massive hours, but that's just a pretty small part of the year. Sort of 2 to 3 months, you might be working max sort of 12 or so hours a day, but the rest of the year, for me at least, I've got a pretty cruisy 7-hour days. I get to knock off early and all that stuff. So, and I'm sure a lot of other places are like that. Pay, it's much like anything. When you first start out, but as you move up and you get more experience, the pay increases with it. So it's just like with anything.
Sarah?
I would agree with Lockie as well. Generally, in my experience, you work 8 till 4:30, but that obviously does change by winery. And vintage, there's no ways about it. It's a mental time. But if you love what you do, it doesn't matter, and it's just a really exciting part of the year. Meeting all these people that have come from across the world to come and work 6 weeks in your winery and learn from them. They often bring wine with them, so you get to do all these wine tastings, and it's a really, really exciting time. It is draining, but it's just exciting too, and it's really cool to see the grapes coming in and then a year down the track taste them in bottle or out of the barrel in tank.
And what's your experience, Ben? Because you've been on cellar door for 5 years now.
Yeah, so the hospitality side is pretty cruisy. So we're doing 5-hour days. Basically, just easy, tasting wine at the same time.
How hard can it be?
I know, but I've done a little bit of viticulture work, and I think it pretty much lines up with what happens in the winery. So at the same time,
So Lockie, during vintage, are you actually working 7 days a week?
I don't know, most places don't. Usually, but I get a day off, every so often. But it can be pretty hard out. It's all. We're at the mercy of nature and all that kind of stuff. So if it's going to rain, we have to work hard to get all the fruit in. If it's not, then maybe we can take a little bit easy. But so it's, it varies. It's not always, you're not always working set hours and all that kind of stuff. So it is a little bit dynamic, but it is, part of it, and definitely learn to love it. So yeah.
So what happens when a frost is coming or there's hail, like we actually had? I don't know if you folks know, but we had a terrible hailstorm very recently. What impact has that had?
We can only really cross your fingers and hope that nothing too bad happens. But again, as I said, we've got some machinery, for frosts and all that kind of stuff. We've got preventative methods with the frost fans and the windmills. But things like hail, as I said, you have to cross your fingers and hope you don't take too much damage. But that kind of stuff and the damage that can occur around these times sort of really reflects what will happen the following season. So it's all quite, it all follows behind each other. It's not just, what happens now doesn't, it definitely affects next year, so yeah.
Cool. Any other questions from the crowd? Sorry. Why do you think young people don't often think about this industry straight from school?
I think a lot of young people think they don't like wine without really giving it a try. For me, I always liked wine as a young guy, but I know, my mates would always turn their nose up for it and take a tui instead or something like that. So I think, that's just all part of the learning and actually giving it a go. And I think a lot of people find that they do like it. And I do find, a lot of people coming in when they're older, they sort of realise that they do love wine and it would be a great career opportunity. So yeah, it's just trying to get the young people learning about wine and that it is actually really good. So yeah.
So we need to do wine drinking at school. Maybe the liaison staff could help with that. Maybe not. Thanks, Josie. So thank you, Lockie, Sarah, and Ben for coming in because they've all made a huge effort to be here today because they're really busy. So thank you for coming in to talk. So with that, we'd just like to close off our session with a video about why people, it's called I Chose EIT.
When I was looking for somewhere to study, I wanted a place that would provide guidance and support that would help me throughout my degree.
It was really important for me to know and understand who I am so that I can teach my children who they are.
It was the Hawke's Bay's wine region that sold it for me. The lifestyle here in Hawke's Bay is just amazing.
It had a good reputation for being a very broad degree with good hands-on and classroom-based learning.
They were really flexible with letting me do classes online using Adobe Connect so that I could still work full-time and study full-time.
The most important things to me really were friends and family, to have them around to support me and encourage me so I could achieve all my goals.
Hawke's Bay is very rich in Māori history, and I've always found that EIT promotes that history within its many programs.
You can connect with the tutors there, so you're not just one of 300. They actually have a genuine interest in you as a student. The first thing I think of when I wake up in the morning, going to EIT, it's another day closer to an industry job.
You can go for a walk along the pier.
You're surrounded by one of the most prestigious wine regions of New Zealand.
I left EIT Hawke's Bay with an identity.
My name is Brad Frederickson and I studied viticulture and wine science at EIT.
I'm Joshua and I chose EIT.
Hi, my name is Grace Patterson and I chose to study at EIT.
Kia ora, ko Jeremy Tātene McLeod taku ingoa. Nā kui whiriwhiri ko te whare takiura o te aho a mau.
Hi, I'm Haley Docker and I'm a junior chef and I chose EIT.
Invincible.